What's shaking, my friends? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Shay, and today we're going to talk about the worst books I read in 2022. Welcome 2023. 2022 reading is now come to a close, and I will talk about these books in no particular order. I will save the worst book I read for last, but the rest, no particular order. Disclaimer, these books are not inherently bad, they just didn't work for me. I know plenty of people who love these books. So, the first one I'm going to talk about is one that I read at the very beginning of the year in January, and that is going to be How High We Go in the Dark by Scorpica Nagamatsu. And this book, I went into it with different expectations. It does have kind of like a pandemic element to it. I knew it was going to be a heartbreaking story, and there are some heartbreaking stories in here. However, if you know me as a person, I don't like short story collections, and that's kind of what this was. There are short stories that tie into each other, but for the most part, it's just these short story collections has some sci-fi tie-ins here that some, like short story collections, some worked well for me and others didn't. So I was very let down by this book, and there weren't that many short stories that I absolutely loved. So this has to go on one of my worst books of the year. The second book to talk about is another one I read pretty early on, and that's going to be The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca. I was heavily anticipating this, and I think this was their first foray into adult romance, but it follows two authors that have had something happen in the past, and they have been friends forever, and then they lose their friendship, and then they have to come back together, kind of like a friends to enemies to lovers kind of situation here. And I just didn't jive with the couple. I didn't jive with what drove them apart, and I didn't jive with the writing style of this book. The next one was one of my most anticipated releases of 2023, and that's going to be Scorpica by G.R. McAllister. This is a book where women rule and men kind of switch roles, and they are the slaves and all of that, and the women are the rulers. And it follows 5 kingdoms, warriors, war, all of that. I just was bored, and I didn't care for any of the characters in the story. I know there's several people that loved this book, but it just wasn't for me. The next is going to be A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, which I read this year. And of course, there were mixed reviews on this one before I went into it, so I kind of went into it knowing that I may not love it. But the writing style was just so difficult to get through. The premise was fantastic. The premise is about this killer school that these people have to fight through. But the writing style was just so bad. The writing style was just not for me, and it was very difficult to get through. And the next two, some novellas that strike. If you know me at all, I have difficulty with novellas. So the first novella that I just didn't really care for was Made Things by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and short book about dolls that come to life, and that's all we need to know. But it just didn't really do anything for me. The second novella that I read that didn't really do anything for me was The Past is Red by Catherine Valente. I know plenty of people who love this novella, and it follows this world. They live in heaps of trash on the ocean. They have no idea what happened to the rest of Earth, and there's a lot of different characters and things go on, and I just didn't care for it because I didn't care for the characters. And number 7 may come as a shock to some of you guys who absolutely love this series, but that's going to be Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. Listen, this was laughable. I understand that it's probably not meant to be taken very seriously because it is humans falling in love with aliens, but it was just a little bit too ridiculous for my taste. Some of the things were just absolutely, if I get kidnapped by some aliens, I'm not going to act like these girls, and so I just couldn't even begin to put myself into the situation where it was just ridiculous. Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. This was a romance that basically this girl, they grew up together, brother's friend, and he was a star in baseball, I think, and he hurts his hand, arm, or whatever. He was a pitcher, I think, and then he can't play baseball anymore. He's sad. She comes together to try to cheer him up, and it kind of goes from there. I didn't like this one as a romance. I didn't care for the characters. I didn't care for the insta-loviness of it, and that's all I have to say about it. The next one is a very beloved book in the booktube community, and that's going to be Moon of the Crested Snow by Wab Geshug Rice. And this book, I've read a lot of apocalyptic books, a ton of them, and I just felt like this one nothing happened extremely that was interesting to me, and it brought nothing new to the genre. And maybe if I had read this one earlier on in my journey with these kind of books, I would have loved it more, but I just didn't find anything new about this. And the worst book that I read in 2022, without shock, without surprise, is going to be Paper Princess by Erin Watt, which is a pseudonym for Elle Kennedy and Jen Fredericks. I've read both of those authors separately and given their works pretty decent ratings. I love Elle Kennedy's works, and Jen Fredericks, I've read one book by her and I think I gave it 3 stars. It was nothing to write home about, but I didn't hate the book. This I actively hated. This is a novel where we are following our main character whose mother has died, and she has basically run away because she doesn't want to get placed into the foster system. I think she's about 16. And she kind of moves from place to place, and as soon as somebody kind of figures out that she may not be who she says she is, or she doesn't have any parental figures, she kind of runs to the next place until somebody finds her, and it happens to be her biological dad's best friend, and now her biological dad, who has never been in her life and she didn't know who he was, has now passed away, and so his friend has vowed to take care of her. And so he's rich, he takes her off, he has a lot of sons, and of course there's going to be like a quadruple triangle. I don't know, but it was the most ridiculous thing that I've ever read in my life. I for the life of me, I cannot understand why people love to read this. I guess because they like soap opera-y things. I don't know, it's not me, but it's fine. It's fine. It kind of was like a train wreck that you just wanted to keep watching to see what happened. But I definitely didn't care for it. And that is all. That's not all the books that I didn't like this year, but these were the ones that were the worst. Leave down below if you've read any of these books, what you thought of them, and let me know what your worst books of 2022 were. And I will catch you guys later.